When you think of the most powerful institution in Pakistan, what comes to mind? The military? Maybe parliament? Well, today we're going to dig into another major player, the Supreme Court. This is the highest court in the land, and believe me, its decisions do a lot more than just shape laws. They can literally define political careers and change the day-to-day lives of millions.
Okay, first up, just look at this number, 56,227. As of late 2025, that's how many cases are waiting to be heard by the court. This is a massive number. And it tells you a couple of things right off the bat. First, the incredible, almost crushing workload these judges are under, and second, just how vital this court is to the entire country.
And that huge number? Well, it makes sense when you see this. The court is, plain and simple, the final arbiter of legal and constitutional disputes. That means when there's a really big question about the law or even about the Constitution itself, this is where it ends. What they say goes. It's literally the final word.
So where does all this power actually come from? To really get what the court does, we first have to explore the constitutional bedrock that gives it all its authority.
But, a court isn't just some building or a bunch of dusty old rules. It's made up of actual people. So who are these justices holding all this power? And how in the world did they get a seat on that bench? Let's dive in.
So leading the whole thing is the Chief Justice of Pakistan. Now, the court is actually allowed to have up to 25 judges, but right now it's running with 16. And here's something pretty unique about it. There's a special Sharia appellate bench which has the final say on how Islamic law is interpreted in the country. And for all the justices, the job ends at a mandatory retirement age of 65.
So how do you even get on the bench? Well, it's not easy. It's this whole multi-step journey. First, you've got to be a citizen with some serious legal experience. We're talking 5 years as a high court judge or a whopping 15 years as a top-tier lawyer. After that, the Judicial Commission gives a thumbs up, the Prime Minister makes the official nomination, and finally, the President gives the final sign-off. The key thing here is that it's a process that involves both the judiciary and the government, a real system of checks and balances.
And over the years, this process has actually led to some really interesting diversity on the court. The bench has seen its first Christian Chief Justice, Alvin Robert Cornelius, and has had judges from the Zoroastrian and Hindu communities. And just recently, a huge milestone. In 2022, Justice Aisha Malik was sworn in as the very first woman to serve on the Supreme Court. Okay, so we know who these people are, but what can they actually do? Now we're getting to the real heart of it all, the specific powers the Constitution gives them.
The court has a few different kinds of authority, or what lawyers call jurisdiction. Let's break it down. Think of its appellate power like being the ultimate umpire. It hears appeals when someone challenges a call made by a lower court. Its original power is for the big stuff, like settling arguments between different provincial governments. Advisory is when the president needs some expert legal advice. But that last one, suo motu, that's probably its most powerful and definitely its most controversial power.
So, suo motu. It's Latin, and it basically means on its own motion. This is a proactive power. It means the court doesn't have to sit around and wait for someone to bring them a case. If the judges see something happening in the country that they think is a major issue, they can just decide to start an investigation all by themselves.
And that is a huge deal. Why? Because it's like a built-in safety valve for the country. When it seems like the government or parliament isn't doing anything about a major problem, say a human rights crisis or a total collapse of public services, the Supreme Court can jump in and force the issue.
Yeah, and this quote from Justice K.M. Sharif, it just nails it. He basically describes the court as a watchdog, one that has the power and really the duty to step in whenever the government is showing, as he puts it, slackness.
But as you can imagine, with that kind of power comes a whole lot of controversy. The court's story is completely tangled up with Pakistan's often chaotic political history, and its rulings have frequently put it right in the middle of some fiery national debates. To get a handle on this history, you have to understand something called the doctrine of necessity. It's a really controversial idea that the court has used to okay actions that are technically outside the Constitution, like military coups. The argument is that sometimes you have to do something illegal to prevent an even bigger disaster. And just look at how this has been used over the years. Back in 1954, it was used to back the firing of the country's very first elected assembly. Then in 1977, it gave legal cover to the military coup that overthrew Prime Minister Bhutto. And again in 1999, it was used to validate another military takeover, though the court did put a 3-year time limit on it that time.
These weren't just legal rulings, they were decisions that fundamentally shaped the country's path.
And look, this whole tug of war between the court and politics, it's not ancient history. Not at all. The debate over the court's power is raging right now, especially with the passage of the 26th Constitutional Amendment back in 2024.
Okay, so here's the breakdown. This new amendment changes how the Chief Justice gets picked. On one side, you have the government, which says this is needed to stop the court from getting too powerful and to make sure Parliament is really in charge. But on the other side, you've got critics, including lawyers and human rights groups, calling it a blow to judicial independence. They say it was rushed through specifically to weaken the court. It's a classic power struggle, plain and simple.
So, with all that history, all that ongoing debate, what does the court look like today? Let's zoom in on how it's actually operating right now.
Okay, remember that massive number from the beginning? Let's circle back to it. In just 1 week in late 2025, the court took on 273 new cases and managed to close out 341. So yes, that backlog is a huge problem, but these numbers show an institution that is incredibly busy. It also tells you something deeper, that more and more people are looking to the highest court in the land to solve their problems.
And if you look at some of its recent decisions, you can almost see the court thinking out loud about its own power. For instance, a 2025 ruling stood up for the rights of taxpayers, saying the government can't just run roughshod over people's dignity. But then, you see a 2022 opinion from Justice Aisha Malik, where she talks about the importance of judicial restraint, basically saying the court needs to be careful not to step on the toes of Parliament. So, that debate between activism and restraint, it's happening inside the court itself.
And really, that brings us right to the heart of it all. The Supreme Court of Pakistan is in this constant, tricky balancing act. It has to weigh interpreting the law against influencing the government, and upholding the Constitution against, sometimes, bending the rules. Moving forward, how the court chooses to balance those scales of justice and power won't just shape its own story, it will shape the future of Pakistan itself.